Language Foundations Vocabulary Flashcards, helping you achieve understanding.
The act of ordaining. The act of conferring, or receiving, holy orders. An authoritative rule. A statute enacted by a city government. The act of ordaining. The act of conferring, or receiving, holy orders. The rabbi's family was present for his ordination. Logical or comprehensible arrangement of separate elements. The status of being ordained to a sacred office. The act of controlling or directing according to rule. Fiscal regulations are in the hands of politicians. A principle or condition that customarily governs behavior. Short haircuts were the regulation. The act of bringing to uniformity, making regular. An authoritative rule. Embryology. The ability of an early embryo to continue normal development after its structure has been somehow damaged or altered. Prescribed by or according to regulation. Regulation Army equipment. The state of being controlled or governed. Identifying word or words by which someone or something is called and classified or distinguished from others. The act of designating or identifying something. The act of putting a person into a non-elective position. The act of putting a person into a non-elective position. Inclined to or serving for the giving of names. The verbal act of naming. The part he failed was the naming of state capitals. A duty that you are assigned to perform, especially in the armed forces. The act of distributing something to designated places or persons. The first task is the assignment of an address to each datum. The act of putting a person into a non-elective position. Law. A transfer of property by deed of conveyance. An undertaking that you have been assigned to do, as by an instructor. The instrument by which a claim or right or interest or property is transferred from one person to another. The act of putting a person into a non-elective position. The appointment had to be approved by the whole committee. Usually in the plural, furnishings and equipment, especially for a ship or hotel. A person who is appointed to a job or position. A meeting arranged in advance. Law. The act of disposing of property by virtue of the power of appointment. She allocated part of the trust to her church by appointment. The job to which you were, or hope to be, appointed. He applied for an appointment in the Treasury. Linguistics. A rule describing, or prescribing, a linguistic practice. Measuring stick consisting of a strip of wood or metal or plastic with a straight edge that is used for drawing straight lines and measuring lengths. Prescribed guide for conduct or action. A principle or condition that customarily governs behavior. It was his rule to take a walk before breakfast. Exercise authority over, as of nations. Decide with authority. A rule or law concerning a natural phenomenon or the function of a complex system. The right-hand rule for inductive fields. Something regarded as a normative example. Violence is the rule, not the exception. Mathematics. A standard procedure for solving a class of mathematical problems. He determined the upper bound with Descartes' rule of signs. Be larger in number, quantity, power, status or importance. dominance or power through legal authority. The rule of Caesar. Decide on and make a declaration about. A basic generalization that is accepted as true and that can be used as a basis for reasoning or conduct. Keep in check. Rule one's temper. Any one of a systematic body of regulations defining the way of life of members of a religious order. The rule of Saint Dominic. Directions that define the way a game or sport is to be conducted. He knew the rules of chess. Have an affinity with, of signs of the zodiac. Mark or draw with a ruler. Rule the margins. The duration of a monarch's or government's power. During the rule of Elizabeth. Prescribed guide for conduct or action. An act passed by a legislative body. Enacted by a legislative body. Statute law. An act passed by a legislative body. Laying hands on a person's head to invoke spiritual blessing in Christian ordination. The application of a faith healer's hands to the patient's body. Regulation establishing the maximum age for doing something or holding some position. Regulation establishing the top speed permitted on a given road. An ancient writ issued by a court of assize to the sheriff for the recovery of property. The regulation of weights and measures of articles offered for sale. A regulation intended to manage or preserve game animals. Usually plural, the status or rank or office of a Christian clergyman in an ecclesiastical hierarchy. The sacrament of ordination. The learned profession that is mastered by graduate study in a law school and that is responsible for the judicial system. He studied law at Yale. A rule or body of rules of conduct inherent in human nature and essential to or binding upon human society. The collection of rules imposed by authority. Civilization presupposes respect for the law. The force of policemen and officers. The law came looking for him. The branch of philosophy concerned with the law and the principles that lead courts to make the decisions they do. A generalization that describes recurring facts or events in nature. The laws of thermodynamics. Legal document setting forth rules governing a particular kind of activity. There is a law against kidnapping. The collection of rules imposed by authority. The great problem for jurisprudence to allow freedom while enforcing order. The branch of philosophy concerned with the law and the principles that lead courts to make the decisions they do.
Become our student and get access to effective and free educational materials. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to become a part of our growing YouTube community and to learn English effectively.